can't remember a time where I have liked or subscribed when someone asked me to. I don't know if that's true for you. I think really the key to this is the creator's personality. Don't let viewers know the video is coming to an end.
Gwilym Sims-Williams is a YouTube scriptwriter who has worked on videos for the likes of Bryan Johnson, Oliur, Matt Gray, and Ali Abdaal. In this video, he's about to reveal how he works on these scripts to create strong hooks, improve viewer retention and engagement, how we can instantly get better at writing our scripts, and how to use ChatGPT to elevate your videos. Enjoy. So for the majority of the people that are watching this right now, they're probably just getting started with YouTube, or they've made a couple of videos but they're struggling with writing their YouTube scripts. What advice would you give them? And what are some of the common mistakes to avoid when writing YouTube videos?
I think my main advice would be don't sit down and write a whole script if you've never done a YouTube video before. Don't do it all word for word and then talk into the teleprompter like this, following all the words. There are a few problems with that. First, I think it's easier to find your voice if you talk to camera a bit beforehand. If you've made a few more relaxed videos, you become confident with how you sound on camera normally when it's just words coming from your brain. That way you have something to compare with how you sound when you're reading from a script. Because even people who are really good performers on camera, they're like natural talents. When you stick a script in front of them for the first few times, they can sound wooden. They can think, I really don't like this. Screw scripting, it just doesn't work for me. So yeah, I would say make sure that you've done a little bit of work on camera before you turn to scripts. So once you've done that, I think a good way to dip your toes into script writing is just make a bullet point list of all the things you want to cover in your video. That's the next step. So have a think about what you're going to say. Don't write it out word for word, but have a bullet points and then sub bullet points for each kind of section. Once you've done that, I think you can then move on to writing your hooks word for word. So the first 30 seconds of the video is the most high stakes, impactful. That's when people decide whether they're going to click or not. That's when the most drop off happens. So if you can make that bit as tightly scripted and planned out as you can, that will give you the highest, I guess, return on investment in terms of scripting. And once you're comfortable with scripting hooks that work, go more into fully scripting your videos.
What are some of the things that you see a lot of YouTube creators do in that hook that is just completely wrong? How can they improve that?
I think a really valuable lesson comes from Johnny Harris, and his approach is you always want to be giving some sort of visual context for what you're talking about, even maybe before you're talking about it. So his classic technique is, look at this bridge in Colombia. There are thousands of people crossing this bridge every single day looking for work in the neighboring country. Why are they doing that? There is some information in that, but it's not really kind of dense. Like recent kind of migration crises between Colombia and the neighboring country have made it really difficult for people to find work, and this has led to blah blah blah. Do you see how the first one is more interesting because you've immediately given some people something tangible to kind of look at and be immersed in and kind of understand on a very primal level. So I think that's a mistake that YouTubers can make, is diving too much into giving lots of dense information about what they're going to do without having hooked the viewer with an interesting visual or an idea or just an image that they can that will kind of light up those kind of lizard parts of their brain.
Yeah, it sounds like the goal of a hook is really to be as concise as possible and to ignite those questions that make someone really want to know why people are crossing that bridge, as opposed to having all of this context that is not necessarily needed, and you can probably provide that later in the video. Between the scripting process and potentially when you're reading a bullet pointed script when you're actually recording the video, how do you know what's needed in the script and what isn't? Because I think sometimes YouTubers are so close to the script because they are the ones that wrote it, that it's a little bit hard to see the forest from the trees, whereas a scriptwriter, they see it from a third-party objective perspective where they know exactly what's needed and what's not. How do you work with YouTubers in that regard? And for those that aren't working with a scriptwriter and are doing this themselves, how can people get better at developing that skill to be able to self-edit and know exactly what needs to be within a script?
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about working with a scriptwriter is that you have two brains instead of one. And that immediately makes things easier. If you think about it, if you're sat by yourself with a video or a script and you're thinking, do I need to include this? Sometimes just having another person saying, this bit is kind of boring, right? Shall we cut it? Is enough for you to be like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And the more expertise that person has, and the more scripts they've read, and the more videos they've watched, I think the better their opinion on that is going to be. Obviously, it's different for different niches. You as the creator usually understand your audience best, and if you've made hundreds of videos, you will probably start developing like a sixth sense for what people are gonna enjoy and what they're not gonna enjoy. Tips for people who don't have access to script writers for self-editing. I think there's a balance to be struck between filming too much and filming too little. If you film too little and you just get the bare minimum without adding in maybe a little bit more than you need to, that can make it feel when you're sat down editing, you can feel very easily, oh, I wish I'd expanded on that point a little bit more. So you do need to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Remember, you can cut stuff down in the edit. What you don't want to do is to ramble on for so long that when it comes to the editing time, you're almost having to put in hours and hours of effort to make it feel as if it was tightly scripted and filmed. That I think is a waste of everyone's time and probably leads to a worse quality result, because I think people can tell if you are moving naturally from one point to another, or if there is like a 10 whole minutes that was cut out.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that you mentioned there was around making so many videos that you kind of inherently understand your audience. How important would you say is understanding your audience in script writing, and how do you recommend beginners learn about their audience?
I think I could give probably value to most YouTubers in any genre, because there are some basics of storytelling and script writing that apply everywhere. But I wouldn't feel as confident diving into totally different genre that I've never worked in before and that I don't watch myself, just because everything has its every genre has its norms. My advice for creators would be try to watch as much other videos in your genre as possible to get an idea for what your viewers enjoy, and watch videos outside of your genre in order to get interesting ideas for how to frame things that maybe your viewers haven't seen but they would really enjoy. So let's say you have a makeup channel, you do makeup tutorials, you show people how the makeup looks. Most people do all this sat down at home with good lighting in a stationary environment. You've gone and watched some Casey Neistat vlogs and you're like, oh, I kind of like this guy's weird vibe. Maybe do one video where you experiment and you see what it's like to, again, maybe this exists already, I don't know the makeup genre, but if you decide to make a video where you are going around town, being more active, letting people see how it looks in a more kind of gritty, real life, engaging way, like Casey does. And that is a way to inject kind of new life into your genre, even while you understand your viewers.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit here, could you walk us through your process from the hook to the call of action at the end of the video? I really want to understand how you structure a YouTube video from the very beginning. I'm guessing that would be the research and understanding what needs to go into the video, then the structure, then actually writing the script.
Yeah, so I think the first step is research. That is talking to the creator about what are all the elements that you want to put into the script. Ideally, we'd have a call, or they'd put a list of bullet points. Maybe they'd be like, well, I generally want to talk about X, Y, and Z. So then I come up with a structure. So I think the video could look like this. And yeah, they sign off on that structure. And then the writing work begins. So generally, I think you can split YouTube videos into the hook, the first 30 seconds. When you're making that sales pitch, you're getting people interested. It's usually a lot of thought goes into that. Then you have the introduction, which can be the same as the hook, but I would say is usually the first maybe 45 seconds. That's when you're expanding a little bit on your original idea, the story is getting started. And yeah, by the end of the introduction, the viewer should have everything they need to understand what is going to happen next. They should be fully invested. Then you have, I guess, what I think about as I think this is kind of the middle section of the script. This is where you, I think, have a lot of creative freedom with the hook in the introduction, but the middle section is when you deliver the basic content that you want to get across. So if it's a listicle, if it's like, say, my daily skin routine, this is the point where you'd be saying, okay, so the first thing I do is X, the second thing I do is Y, then I use a moisturizer, and then finally I use a cleanser. That's the middle section. Then finally you have the ending, the closing of the video. My preferred method for closing out a video is to end as soon as possible. Don't have a long outro. Don't let viewers know that the video is coming to an end. What you want to avoid is saying a minute or two before the video ends, so guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video, or so yeah, that's it, that's my skincare routine, because then retention will tank. You should either be providing more entertainment or context, or you should be saying, all right guys, thanks for watching, and then the final part of the video is the call to action, right at the end, where you'll usually either point someone towards one of your other videos, or you'll simply say, thanks for watching, see you in the next one, something like that. My preference is either to finish the video in a really sudden way, or to give someone a mini pitch, maybe 10 seconds, on why they should watch another one of your videos. So this video is all about skincare, my general skincare routine, but the thing I found that really works for wrinkles under the eyes is this thing that I talk about in this video here. That, I think, creates a good bridge for someone to go and watch more of your content on your channel, get more invested in what you're talking about. And it also sends a signal to YouTube that this was a good video. Not only did the person watching enjoy it and watch it all the way to the end, because remember, at the end, most people have left. The people who are still with you are people who are invested enough to watch all the way to the end. But yeah, you're also telling YouTube, these people then go and they watch more stuff on my channel. So please spread the word via the algorithm that people should watch more.
Yeah, that's completely right. The more that you can keep someone on YouTube watching as many of your videos in a chain as possible always helps your YouTube channel to be pushed by YouTube a little bit more. So you mentioned a few times in your answer there around incorporating call to actions and how you can best do that at the end of the video to get someone to watch another video. A lot of YouTubers still like to include, be sure to like and subscribe and all of those kind of things, hit the notification bell in the middle of the video. And the clients that I work with, whenever they've done that, you just see like a huge dip in retention. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think we should cut them out completely? Or have you found a way to include all of that within your scripts without disrupting the flow of content for that viewing experience?
What I'm saying right now is not very data driven, but never have I think I can't remember a time where I have liked or subscribed when someone asked me to. I don't know if that's true for you. I don't know if that's true for viewers. YouTube doesn't give us a way to tell if at what point in the video someone clicked like or subscribe. That would be really interesting if they did. But yeah, I generally advise people to not include it in the scripts. I think it breaks the immersion. It takes up a few valuable seconds. Maybe it works better for some niches than others. In a really tight-knit community, like one single video game that's a bit more niche, if you say, hi guys, it would mean a lot to me if you liked and subscribed to my channel so I can carry on making this content for free, then maybe a lot more people would be like, you know what, let's give this person some credit, let's help them out. That I think is fine. But if you're making videos that are targeted at a more general audience, I would say don't bother. And if you are going to do it, please don't do it at the start before you've delivered any value. I would save it for maybe the middle or sort of the last third of your video when you can maybe quickly say, hi guys, I really hope you're enjoying these tips. If you want to like or subscribe, that would be amazing, so you can see more of my content. Okay, on to the next point. Something like that. That's how I would approach it.
So I've never actually subscribed to anyone who has said, hey, be sure to subscribe and like and hit notification bell. And I do find that that seems to be the case with a lot of the clients that I work for. But I do find that the clients that I work for are more in like the education niche. Their audience is a little bit older, and like their 20s, their 30s, their 40s onwards. But actually, when I was a YouTuber 10 years ago on a gaming YouTube channel, I actually found that children, because there was like children and teenagers who were watching my Minecraft content, they would actually like and subscribe. And I don't know, maybe they're just more susceptible to believing like, oh, if we hit 10,000 likes, I'll upload a new video this weekend, I would always get 10,000 likes. And so I guess it really depends on like the target audience. And I know Mr. Beast used to do this all of the time, where he'd be like, if you subscribe, you win a free cookie. Which I don't know how Mr. Beast is going to get free cookies to like 10 million people when he was uploading videos, a couple years back. But it used to work. He always used to get a lot more subscribers and likes because of it. And he has mentioned before that incentivizing his audience in that way did result in a lot more likes and comments and subscribers and things like that. So I think it really depends on how well you know your audience and the type of audience that you have. But I know for me, like children and teenagers really do love that stuff. But I think if you are in your 20s or above, and that is your target audience, they're most likely not going to like and subscribe. And if you spend even just like 20 seconds talking about that, I've always seen people would just skip ahead in your video, which obviously harms retention. And it's such a minor little thing, losing 10 seconds or 20 seconds here. But if you know it's something that is going to harm the retention, just don't do it. Just cut it out, because it's just minor, but every little helps. And so I always kind of recommend to people that there's no point having the like and subscribe and hit notification bell in the middle of the video. And likewise with you, link the current video that you have to another video on your channel that is also going to be of value to someone. And there is that natural link where they can continue to binge watch all of your content.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Beast using a bit of the dark arts recently, I think on the Colin and Samir podcast. Or maybe it was another video, I can't quite remember, but he was saying at the beginning, remember guys, you have to watch the whole thing, otherwise you'll have 7 years of bad luck, or something like that. Which, maybe you don't believe it, but it gives that little extra bit of incentive for you to watch a bit longer, right? Which I find scary. I think something else you can do to increase engagement is just ask a genuine question. Like, hey guys, if you have got experience of this yourself, or you have a recommendation for me, can you please leave it in the comments, because I would love to read that, and I read all of my comments. Something like that, I think, because YouTube tracks how much people are engaging with your video in terms of comments as well as likes and views. So I think that's useful.
For someone who is struggling to get good at writing scripts, are there any mindset shifts or ways of thinking about scripts that could help them to see the writing process in a new way, that can really help them to get better at writing really clear and concise scripts?
What really helped me when I was just starting out was to remind myself that I am writing this down on a screen, so it might look like an essay or an article, but it is not going to be an essay or an article. Someone is going to be reading this out, and it's going to be on video. You want to try and write as if you were saying it out loud. Obviously, that's classic writing advice. It's way it's way easier to actually say than do. So what I would recommend is, after you've written something out, read it out loud. Even if you're writing for someone else, just read it out loud and see if it sounds natural or not. You can even use AI like ChatGPT to simplify your writing, or to replace longer, more complicated words with shorter ones, if that works well. That's what I would mainly recommend if someone is trying to shift their mindset, is just try and think of it as words that you will be saying, not words that someone will ever be reading off a page.
A question I want to ask you is that on YouTube, there tends to be two types of content. You have the entertainers and you also have the educators. And there are some people who are a bit of a blend in between the two, which a lot of people refer to as edutainment YouTubers. How do you go about balancing information and entertainment within a script? Because I think it's quite a hard thing to do for a lot of YouTubers to really understand, how can I provide value, but make this in an interesting and fun way that keeps people engaged without it resulting in skits and gags and jokes and props and all sorts of things. Is there some sort of formula that you follow, or is there any kind of advice that you can give to people regarding that?
I think really the key to this is the creator's personality. Tom Scott's personality is different to, say, the Veritasium guy's personality. That is, so one might be a little bit more serious, the other one might be a little bit more lighthearted, or just have maybe like a slightly sarcastic delivery or something like this. I think the very first thing you can do to make your videos more entertaining is to maybe lean a bit into that personality, amp it up a bit. If you naturally tend towards a certain type of humor, just try to include a little bit more of that on the fly when you're reading things out. You don't need to set up gags and jokes, for example, to include humor. I think, to bring up Casey Neistat again as an example, his stuff is often very funny, but it's not that he's joking around all the time. He puts himself in weird, interesting situations and is then totally deadpan about it. So I think a good way of approaching this is as your foundation. Most YouTube channels have someone who's presenting, the main kind of talent. And I think really zero in on what their sense of humor is. If you want to include humor, what do they find entertaining or interesting to do? So in terms of injecting entertainment into a script when you're writing it, I think, again, just the main thing to remember is, what are the stakes? Why should people care? If you want to look at, if you want to look at some interesting scientific phenomenon in the Antarctic, you need to really make people care and maybe describe why this is such a big deal, or why no one else has ever filmed it, why you are scared about going to film it because there's maybe some risk to yourself. Describe how difficult it was to get out there when you're there in the Antarctic, which you obviously have the budget to do. Make it clear that you are having a crazy time and this is the maddest thing that's ever happened to you. All of that stuff you can work into a script. You can just put a bullet point and say, describe how I am feeling right now. That type of thing will add a lot of entertainment value to your video, even if you're sticking purely to factual things.
So when it comes to script writing, at the moment there seems to be two camps. There seems to be those that will write a script, which isn't really a script, it's just a couple of bullet points that they look at and then look at their camera, talk, look back at the bullet points and do that throughout the video. And a lot of that is kind of off the cuff. It's the bullet points are there to kind of keep them loosely on track, but really it comes off the dome whenever they're talking. And then you have the second camp, which are those that read from a teleprompter. The scripts are written word for word, either by themselves or by a scriptwriter. In your view, how important are teleprompter word for word scripts compared to bullet point scripts where people really just freestyle?
I think there's a time and place for both. I think teleprompter scripts are very useful if you have so much to say on a topic that you could just go on and on forever. You could do a 5-hour podcast on it. If you're filming a video that is like, my journey from being broke to being a millionaire, how are you gonna say all that? You could sit down and you could speak off the top of your head, and sure, you would probably often have really good sound bites that you could edit into a video if you took the time. But where teleprompting really comes into its own is honing that down into a really concise story where you can sit down, talk to the camera for 30 minutes and have, as you were saying, like a really tightly crafted story that respects the audience's time and delivers maximum information or entertainment per minute. I think equally scripting is really useful if it's a very information-dense script. So as you mentioned, productive skincare routine, there's a lot of information and data and names of products. If you were always looking down at a laptop to look at the bullet points and look at the data and trying to translate that into something you can say for the camera, that would take up a lot of time when you're filming. It would also come across less smoothly because there would be lots of cuts and it would be a bit jarring. And it would also be more draining for you as the talent talking to the camera, because you're having to think rather than just being able to focus on giving a good performance. That said, I think it's a waste of time to script out videos that like the back of your hand. So if you want to review the new MacBook Air and you want to make it a fairly low-key video, and you have 5 points of things you like about it, 5 points of things you don't like about it, and you know that you can stick to those points without waffling, I don't think you necessarily need to script that out word for word, because the time investment probably doesn't translate into concision of the video.
Yeah, I found that to be the case when I write scripts for my own videos. Sometimes I have used the bullet point method, and easy to write those scripts, and I find that I enjoy writing those videos more. I say writing, but it's literally just putting down 15 different bullet points. But what tends to happen, I find, is sometimes when it gets to the edit part of the video content creation process, I realize, oh, like there would have been better with some context there, or I'm not sure if someone understood that part because I was assuming something in my own brain that I didn't verbalize. Whereas when I'm having to write a word for word script, it really forces me to think, what are the foundational points here that I can build upon to get someone to understand what it is that I'm making in the video? And I think potentially it might be a case of having a 50-50 blend of the two, where you try and write a rough first draft that is as close to word for word as possible, and then you turn that into bullet points. Maybe even potentially running through that very rough first draft through ChatGPT and saying, hey, can you summarize this into 15 bullet points? And then that is what you go with when you're recording your video.
Something else that really helps, that scripting really helps with, is it makes you really think, what am I saying? Do I know what I'm saying? Do I know all the points that I'm going to make, really? It's very easy to look at your 5 bullet points and think, yeah, I got this. I know basically what I'm going to say here. But when it comes to time for filming, you sit down and you're like, I don't know if this all hangs together, actually. And if you are a one-man band, you're filming in your bedroom with your camera, you don't have a whole team hanging around your studio, the stakes are not as high. But if you're suddenly sat there with a videographer, a YouTube producer as well, maybe the editor is expecting like a few videos that you're going to film that day because you're batch filming, and you're suddenly sat around trying to think, how am I going to say this really? Suddenly you're wasting a lot of time and it becomes really frustrating for you. So yeah, scripting is a way of getting that out of the way as soon as possible and just making filming a breeze. That said, I think there are definitely creators who should not script out things word for word, at least not the whole video. Or where it just doesn't make sense for them to do that. So someone like Emma Chamberlain, for example, does a vlog of her whole day, or maybe big sections of her day. Her whole thing is getting content out fairly quickly, being really off the cuff, talking about whatever is happening right now. Maybe she does a few takes, I'm not entirely sure, but if she was trying to script out her thoughts for a vlog every day, that would just never work. Similarly, creators there's one I really like, a guy called Beau Miles. He's this Australian outdoor adventure type guy. All he needs to do for his videos to work is to have a really interesting premise, like I'm gonna run a marathon 1 mile an hour for 26 hours, right? That's just such an interesting idea. What he then needs to nail is the production. So is there someone there with a camera to film him, capture all the interesting stuff that's going to happen? And yeah, he just needs to focus on being in the moment, talking to the camera, being authentic, capturing his real feelings. He doesn't need to script that out. That would be ridiculous. And so yeah, I think that's something to bear in mind when you're thinking, should I script or should I not script, is how much of your video is dependent on how you are feeling in the moment. Are you responding to things that are happening in real time? Or are you just sat down in a closed off environment where it's just your thoughts and the camera? And scripting probably works better for the second.
So one of the things we have touched on just a moment ago was ChatGPT. And since you started writing scripts for YouTubers, ChatGPT has just taken over absolutely everything. How has that affected you? And how can YouTubers best use something like ChatGPT to help them write better scripts? Or would you say, stay away from it, use your own brain and try and write your own scripts?
Something interesting I came across, an interview with Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, who created ChatGPT, was saying his biggest use case for ChatGPT by a long way is summarization. ChatGPT and other AI tools that are similar to it are really good for, well, I say really good, they often mess up, but They're useful for feeding a lot of data and text to and getting them to give you their summary of what's going on. I treat ChatGPT more as like a writing companion, a really erratic, strange writing companion who has really weird thoughts most of the time, or very generic thoughts most of the time, but 10% of the time it's something that's interesting or useful that I can incorporate into my script. If you were to write a whole script just using ChatGPT, if you were to just write in, hi, please write me a script about X, you'd get a pretty basic outcome. And that is when most people stop. They're like, oh, this thing is rubbish. It just gives me this really generic basic content. If you spend a little bit more time doing the prompts, if you say, I want a review of the new MacBook Pro, here are all of its specs. I want this review written in the style of Ali Abdaal. I want it to be 2,000 words long. I want you to include a balance of humor and sarcasm. And I want you to wrap up by pointing towards this video of mine. Then you get a more interesting result. The thing is, the more prompting you do, the more you are, in a sense, writing out the video yourself. So how has it affected my work? I would say it's made research in some ways more easier because I can summarize things. I can ask it for summaries of whole YouTube videos if I paste in the transcript. I think it's also useful as a second opinion. Once I've gotten a script written, I can easily ask ChatGPT, hey, can you rewrite this section? Or can you simplify this section for me? It will give me suggestions on how to simplify it or use different wording. And often I'll think, yeah, that is actually a simpler, faster, more elegant way of saying it. I'll just use that. But for actually constructing how a script is going to flow and for getting wording that works right for the specific creator, I think that is still really useful to have a scriptwriter on board.
Cool. So thanks so much for providing us with your scriptwriting wisdom, Gwilym. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. That's my main. It's at GwilymSW. And I've also got a website, which is gwilymsw.com. So you can find me there.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming along and speaking to us. And we'll catch you over on Twitter.
Thanks, Jamie.
If you enjoyed that video with Gwilym, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to improve your YouTube scripts even more, check out this episode with George Blackman, who breaks down the scripts he has written for the likes of Mike Shake, Film Booth, Ali Abdaal,